Hello everyone, and welcome back to Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Today we're going to see more about family matters concerning Prince Eddie, the princess's daughter, and her husband. I like the videos that reveal how the family bonded or didn't, and the things that were going on with their lives during a specific time. So let's see what's going on today. The Prince of Wales was going through things himself, not just his son. In September of 1890, there was a house party given to the prince at Tranby Croft in Yorkshire, and one of the guests, Sir Arthur Gordon Cumming, was accused of cheating at baccarat. This episode led to a lawsuit in which Gordon Cumming claimed damages for slander and called for the prince as a witness. No other scandal did so much damage to the prince's reputation and made him more unpopular with the nation at large. The princess was on her husband's side and supported him loyally both in private and in public. In a letter to Prince George about that horrid Cumming business, she refers to Gordon Cummings as that brute and vile snob and writes, "You're quite right to think that as usual Papa through his good nature was dragged into it and made to suffer for trying to save with the others together this worthless creature who has since behaved too abominably to them all." But all wasn't unhappy. There was the arrival of a first grandchild. On the 17th of May, 1891, the Duchess of Fife gave birth to a daughter. In a letter to Prince George, the princess described she was at her daughter's bedside in the early hours of the morning, and her delight when at 5 o'clock, thank God, I was a happy grandmother and held my little naked grandchild in my arms. It squeaked like a little suckling pig. In this same letter, she writes that Prince Eddie's engagement is at an end, commenting, "To me, it is too horrible a grief." She thought that the bride-to-be would have made a perfect wife for Eddie in every way. The hearing of the baccarat case lasted from 1 June to 9 June. Judgment was given against Gordon Cumming, a result which did nothing to make the prince more popular, as the Queen wrote, and the light which had been shed on his habits alarms and shocks people so much. On the other hand, his wife's loyalty to him provided much favorable comment. One article in the Review of Reviews being especially worth quotation. The Prince of Wales, his tenderness to his wife during her illness, his constant attention to her wants, the pains which he takes to keep her informed of all that is likely to amuse her, these are all strangely at variance with the popular conception which had been gone abroad. The prince and princess have more tastes in common than most people imagine, and no wife could be more indignant at the injustice with which her husband had been assailed in the last few months than the princess. There's not in her the stuff of a Victoria or an Elizabeth, but perhaps on that very account they live on much more affectionate, harmonious terms than they might have done had she been otherwise. The writer of this article said that the affectionate and harmonious terms existing between husband and wife had been disturbed by another, and for the princess a far more wounding scandal than the baccarat case. A wife finds it much more easy to forgive her husband's gambling habits than his involvement in the affairs of another woman. The tangled business of Lord Charles Beresford and Lady Brooke was well under way before ever the prince went to Tranby Croft. Frances Brooke was an attractive and unscrupulous woman. Describing in her memoirs the conventions and habits current in her youth, she wrote, "We obeyed our parents, respected our elders, and kept our promises, even our marriage views." Nothing could be further from the truth where her own marriage vows were concerned. Frances Brooke had had an affair with the prince's old friend, Lord Charles Beresford, and when the liaison ended, she'd been foolish enough to write him a most indiscreet letter. By accident, the letter fell into the hands of Beresford's wife, who saw it as a useful weapon to use if ever her rival should be minded to make further trouble. She therefore deposited it with the famous solicitor George Lewis, who knew more than any man about the scandalous secrets of the Victorian society. Lady Brooke appealed to the Prince of Wales to help her recover this compromising document. After his experiences with Lady Mordaunt and Lady Aylesford, the prince should have learnt the wisdom of keeping clear of compromising letters, but he found Frances Brooke very touching in her role of beauty in distress. Foolishly, he rushed into the fray and demanded that George Lewis should destroy the letter. Quite properly, George Lewis refused to part with his client's property, even at the request of the Prince of Wales, but he nevertheless allowed the prince to read the letter. The hot-tempered Irishman, Charles Beresford, was not naturally furious at this piece of royal interference, and he called his one-time friend a coward and a blackguard to his face and was only just restrained from striking him. The prince retaliated by imposing a social boycott on the Beresfords, which fell especially heavily on Lady Charles, a beautiful woman who much enjoyed the pleasures of society. In July 1891, Lord Charles took the only revenge that was open to him by threatening to publish an account of the whole sorry affair, publicity being evidently our only remedy. This threat was more dangerous because by now Lady Brooke had taken Mrs. Langry's place as the prince's recognized mistress, recognized, that is to say, by society, but not by the princess, who never extended Frances Brooke the toleration she had shown to Lily Langtry. The princess herself had much trouble on her mind. While her husband's good name was thus threatened by unpleasant scandal, her son's dissipated habits and general instability had reached a pitch where they could no longer be ignored. Prince Eddie resembled his wicked uncles, who had been the boogeymen of Queen Victoria's youth. Like them, he could never be trusted to behave quite like other people, especially where the emotion of love was concerned. Falling passionately in love with one woman, and in less than no time just as passionately in love with another, and almost invariably selecting someone who could not possibly be regarded as a suitable bride for a royal prince. Again, like his great uncles, he possessed a certain charm, especially for women, but he was trivial in racing language, not quite up to the weight. What was to be done with this unsatisfactory man? By now the prince had lost all patience with his son. Impelled by the same motives which led so many Victorian fathers to ship their black sheep off to Canada or Australia, he planned to send Prince Eddie on a tour of the remote colonies. The Queen expressed her strong disapproval. After his father, Prince Eddie was heir to the English throne. In her view, the English sovereign must be a good European with a command of the English language and a knowledge of European countries and personalities. None of these things did Prince Eddie possess. He and Georgie are dear good boys, but are very exclusively English, and that is a great misfortune. Queen Victoria knew something of her grandson's failings, but she did not realize how very far he was from being a dear good boy. The prince feared to expose Prince Eddie the alluring temptations of European cities, but how is he to make this point clear to the Queen? It's difficult to explain to you the reasons why we do not consider it desirable for him to make lengthened stays in foreign capitals, he wrote in some embarrassment. The princess felt that her son was a naughty bad boy, but she thought she could reform him. She thought that he should remain with his regiment, which was conveniently as near home as Ireland, keep him under her maternal eye. The prince vetoed this plan. He thought it was a waste of time for Prince Eddie to remain in the army. He was in an unhappy situation. Only 2 months had passed since Baccarat case, and at any moment the much more compromising Beresford might burst upon the public. How could he admonish his son without laying himself to the obvious retort about dwellers in glass houses? At the beginning of August, the prince and princess were together at Cowes, where they must have had ample time and opportunity to discuss the question of Prince Eddie's future. But the prince would not have a final confrontation with his wife on this subject. On the 14th of August, he left for Hamburg. 4 days later, his secretary, Francis Knollys, sought an interview with the princess. Francis Knollys had been charged to put 3 plans before her. The final decision on Prince Eddie's future was to be hers. The first scheme was a colonial tour, the second a combination of a colonial tour with a continental one, and the third, and most surprising, was an immediate marriage with Princess May of Teck. This suggestion wasn't a complete surprise, though. As far back as 1866, Ponsonby had noted possibilities of brides for Prince Eddie, and he had written Princess May out of the question because the Prince and Princess of Wales have no love for the parents and the boy does not care for the girl. Although Ponsonby was wrong in supposing that the princess did not love the Duchess of Teck, everyone agreed that the Duke would not be an ideal father-in-law. Poverty, enforced idleness, and constant brooding over the taint of his pedigree made him touchy and ill-tempered. Then he had a severe stroke in 1884, which slightly affected his mind. Although the princess may not have had concerns, the Queen had a disapproval of the Cambridge connection. But there was no objection to the princess herself. Princess May, she had looks, brains, character, and common sense. The difficulty she had in her home life taught her tact and gave her a surprisingly maturity of judgment. After long discussions, the princess chose the third alternative. Her son should marry Princess May. Once she settled on that, she made a trip to Denmark. So I am going to end the video here. In the next episode, we have the princess trying to deal with gossip about her husband, and Prince Eddie's days are numbered, and the princess is finding it very hard to take, as we might imagine. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you haven't subscribed, if you could do it, it would help the channel to grow, as well as giving a thumbs up. It's all a great help. And if you haven't clicked on the notification bell, if you could do that, it lets you know when a video is posted. More importantly, I want to wish everyone a good day, and tune in again soon for another episode of Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Thank you. Bye.